Hola VS Gamers, it's time to jump right into this week's Talking VS Chats. I'm so ready for today's topic.
Yeah, today we are probably gonna ruffle up a few feathers with this one. Of course, we can't do it alone. We have Greybeard and Happy Meal to give us that insight.
Okay, gents, let's get right into it. What do you think about the orgs that are currently involved in the VS Championships?
The three top orgs are not South African orgs. They're not sub-Saharan African orgs. That's a big
says a lot.
issue that we have to resolve. Last episode, we spoke a lot about high schools and how important they are. And for me, the singular most important thing to grow the player base of Rocket League. The next important cog in making Sub-Saharan African Rocket League globally competitive is local orgs. So, and I'm hoping during this conversation we come up with some ideas, because if I'm completely honest, I'm still trying to understand the ecosystem enough and what will bring them in. And Happy Meal, you'll have a bit of inside track as someone who's been represented by orgs, but we need more.
Sorry, for the people who are watching, who are these top three? These the ones that are from overseas.
Limitless, US based, Cosmico, US based, Genesix, US based.
Oh, all US based.
All US based.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, go for it. Whew. We did ruffle up a few feathers already.
So obviously, as being a player myself, I've dealt with like many organizations. I've had negotiations and discussions with local organizations, international organizations. I will say, when an international organization comes to me or my team, it's usually like it's a very intriguing offer, because, well, if it's US based, I mean, their standard of living, just generally speaking, is higher.
Sure.
So they can offer us more with it costing less.
Yeah.
In theory. So that is always a factor to consider. However, it is shameful, maybe to consider the fact that our local organizations aren't representing our local players. It's a bit frustrating to see that too. And it's not as if we don't have the resources or the funding. We have really big organizations. Bravado, Orlando Pirates. I mean Orlando Pirates is the biggest football club on the continent. I mean, come on. They can
Please give us some of those names of the orgs that you would assume would be in Rocket League that are not.
Okay, so I think obviously I've mentioned Bravado, Orlando Pirates, ATK, Goliath.
Another one is Punishers, although to be fair, they were here last season, and I do know that they are going to be making a comeback. But those are probably some big names that should be involved.
Yes.
That we would love to have involved.
Those are our biggest names, right?
Yeah.
They aren't involved, so it's a little sad, I think.
I think there's, I think it is quite nuanced, because it's. Esport in this region is kind of interesting, and I'm still trying to understand the dynamics of it all. But obviously there's needs from an org perspective, and there are needs from a player perspective. And I think there's been a little bit of a breakdown in that. Rocket League went from a fairly niche sport into a very well-paid sport. And so for a local player, they see the global scene and the sort of salaries that are being paid. So when an org comes to them, they're like, hey, well, this is how much money we want, and the org wants results, and I think there's a mismatch there, and we want to open up that dialogue and figure it out. Players need to temper their expectations and up their level of professionalism in terms of the value they bring to an org, and then the org has got to have an understanding of, I believe, in how does the community grow so it benefits them long term. So it's an important conversation.
Like, in your opinion, how do you even start that conversation? Like, if you're in your boardroom, how do you speak to the players? How do orgs get more involved in that scene?
I tweeted out last week, and I said for local orgs, I think there are good opportunities to be involved in Rocket League. Please get in touch and let's talk. I will tell you what the landscape is, what it looks like, what's happening with VS Championships next year, the high school scene. There are really good things happening. Let's have a look at the entire landscape and let's see where the opportunities are for you, and then go from there.
Do these orgs have players to fight over in our landscape that are good enough that they can feel like, you know what, yes, we have a CS team, yes, we have a EAFC team. Are there enough players that we're actively going to go, okay, no, but I want that one, no, okay, or fighting over contracts and so forth?
bidding wars in
Yes.
Africa, I wouldn't say it's a very common practice.
Okay.
What I do think lacks it's a missing aspect in all local organizations: investment and risk. It doesn't occur
Yes.
here.
Yes.
Around the world, massive organizations. I mean, these American organizations that are coming into South Africa. It's a risk.
Yeah.
It is a risk even for them. I mean, it's a smaller one, but it's still a risk. South African organizations, I don't think they want to invest and risk. It's a simple solution for them. Results equal performance,
Yeah.
performance equals exposure, exposure equals money for us. That's all they care about, right? And it's sad because I think if you're simply relying on results, I mean, at some point you're only going to be fighting for 2 or 3 teams. But if you take a risk and let's call it an investment, let's be positive and call it an investment, and you put the effort and time and resources into a team, who knows what can come out of it? You know, I think loyalty in esports, I think professionalism in esports is not very abundant. It's not present at all. I mean, I think it's largely down to the general age of the esport itself and the participants mostly. I mean, the average age is quite young. That contributes. It's a huge addition to the problem. But I don't think there are enough local organizations that are willing to put the risk in, and it sucks because I think if you are willing to invest in players, I find that if you're willing to do that, you might be shocked at the loyalty you can develop through the players themselves.
Now, how do players attract the orgs to come and play? You know, how do players, maybe is the social media, maybe make more content, make more noise?
So to take it half a step back from there, over the last 3 years in Rocket League, it's been all about Worlds.
Okay.
The World Championship.
Sure.
And it's kind of, it's either that or nothing. So orgs have come and gone, well, we only have one spot. So out of all the players, only 3 are going to go.
Yeah.
So if the top 3 players are already sort of taken by an org, the rest are like, oh, well, what's in it for us kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's one element to it. So we have to build the local scene and more opportunities. Again, which is why high school Rocket League is so important and why VS Gaming Champs is so important. And it's got to be the premier local event. It's the only one currently that has a LAN. So it has to become an event of huge prestige. And that's where we're going now with VS and what we want to create. Because that becomes of interest for orgs. And to be fair to Cosmico and to Genesix, 2 of these of the US based orgs, they have a long-term vision for this region. They haven't just come in 2 weeks before the start of the season. Here's some money. Who are the top players? We want a top 1 finish, top 2 finish. We want a team going to majors or to worlds. They have said, we want to build this region. So they've been a fantastic example. And that's what we would like to create with other local orgs. But there has to be a local scene they can invest in and say, look, it's statistically unlikely you're going to have a team going to Worlds or to majors. But man, they can make the VS Gaming Championships and everything that leads up to it. So that's the first part, is make this local scene huge and attractive for orgs. And secondly, players. My ongoing frustration with Rocket League players who want to become professional or they are pros is they're not building their own profiles. You have a much better chance of being selected, maybe getting paid, maybe getting value if you have value to bring to an org. I stream, I create content, I've built an audience, I've got people who come and watch me play, who engage with me. Very few do it. It is a problem. And I know there is value orgs can bring because they can help players elevate themselves. And that's probably what we need. But that needs the willingness of the players from the beginning, or to say, listen, I'm keen to stream. I just need help. How do I do it? Help me get there. And so all of this is a two-way street. It's not all the fault of the players. It's not all the fault of the orgs. But it is rife with opportunity, and I think there's lots of place for us to meet.
Happy Meal, do you feel like there's been a disconnect as a player yourself in terms of like what you can bring to the org, or do you feel like players are maybe waiting for the org to call them?
I think my perspective is a bit of an anomaly. Whenever an organization is interested in picking myself or a team up, my first inquiry always is what do they gain? Because I mean, it's business.
It's business,
I'm not oblivious to the fact that they also need to benefit from this. If an org comes in promising, a lot, I'm always wary. Why are you promising all these things to us? So my curiosity behind the running of every organization I've been part of, I it's something I've always been interested in. You know? When I'm in an organization, I make it my effort to understand the reasoning, the drive, and particularly like where the organization benefits from me as a player. So I personally don't think I have any disconnect between what I give to an org and what they give to me. I don't have any disconnect. That is not something I think I struggle with, but the reality is most players do. Most players do. I think the pure fact that they believe they're the stars, the talent, and that simply is enough to draw in investment and resources from an organization. Yeah, it's surprisingly common, and I mean, even within my own teams, I won't say names or anything, but even within my own teams, dealing with my own players, negotiating. Because look, every team I've been part of, I've been the oldest. I'm the captain, so I'm always the first line of communications between the organizations. I deal with our negotiations. Obviously, I don't just decide for the team. I go and relay this back to them, but I'm always dealing with some hiccup along the way. Here's the amount of money that they're giving us. This is what I believe we're worth, right? I always give a realistic standard. I'm not asking for, I don't believe in bidding wars, because I'm not in it for selfish intentions. I mean, obviously, I would love to earn money and be remunerated for all the effort. I mean, who wouldn't? Exactly. But I'm not here to rob organizations. As long as they're providing me with a platform equally as good, it's fair. I think my negotiation is realistic. However, when I go relay this back to my teammates, generally speaking, it's a lot of back and forth. They're telling me, no, but we want all these other things. And I'm like, look, it's all great that you want these things, but what are you giving them? And it becomes internal negotiations before I even get to the organization. I'm negotiating with my teammates. So it's very common, very, very common.
Let's stick to that topic of the players themselves. When it comes to professionalism, how does that then go down? Because it is a growing sport, and when you are growing, you're the new kids on the block, you're starting to make money, orgs are starting to come to you to say, hey, we see you have something here, come work with us. How does then that translate with the players who are now these rising stars? That deep. Happy Meal felt that one.
My biggest gripe, not just with Rocket League,
esports in general.
It's inherently unprofessional. It is very disheartening for me to look at. I consider myself quite a professional in my field. I take what I do very, very seriously. And at first I thought it's just the players I'm around that aren't actually reciprocating, and it was just I'm unlucky. I'm meeting players who are talented but don't really care too much. They're just good. The more I dived into it, the more
the culture is
inherently unprofessional.
And I do think it's very easy to target the unprofessional. Say, look at you, you're not professional. Yeah. It is a culture, but who and what are they learning from? They've got no idea. All of their understanding of the professional scene comes from watching the global scene and the rumors they hear about, this 16-year-old prodigy who's now the best in the world and he's earning, I don't know what Zen's earning, but it's some massive euro amount of money, and they go, well, I'm going to be. There's a missing step in the education. Rocket League in particular is very young. So you can compete globally at the age of 13.
That's what I want to ask. Is it an age thing?
It's absolutely an age. It's an Asian experience thing. Happy Meals just turned 25. He's had some life experience. From my perspective, he's got a long way to go. But compared to the rest of the scene, he's had some experience and some understanding. So there is a gap that has to be bridged, and it's not. Mostly, it's born out of ignorance. And there are no professional bodies that look after kids. I mean, you have kids being approached by orgs, and I'm going, where are the parents? Where are the teachers? Where is someone? Because it's very easy to go, hey, listen, I'm going to give you a peripheral. I'll give you
a keyboard.
I'll give you a keyboard and a controller.
I'll do whatever you want.
And a pair of shoes, and you're on my team for 2 years. Sure.
Of course.
So there's things that have to be built in there to help that, but the professionalism is huge. And most, people love the idea of, I'm playing video games for a living. It sounds like the dream. Absolutely, until it is your job. And if it's your job, you got to show up. You got to show up on time. You got to show up for practice. You got to get up and do the thing. And when the org who's paying you a salary says we're doing a publicity thing, and you got to be on a stream, and you got to show up. But I don't feel like it. Okay, well, you know what? I'm not sure all of us felt like being here today, but here we are. Big smile. We're doing the job.
Now, we've spoken about the role that players and let's say orgs have in like their responsibility. But let's talk about the responsibility of team managers and coaches to attract orgs into the VS Championship.
So I'm gonna interject. I think Rocket League inherently is a young players. You know, the best players in the world usually start around like 14, and then
It's too late.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. We just missed it though. Just missed it.
almost. And their career usually spans for like 3 or 4 years, to like 20. Obviously, I'm not saying they can't play longer,
Yeah,
but
sure.
that's like the usual play case.
The accepted
Yeah,
convention,
yeah,
which
yeah,
I think
yeah.
is changing, but yeah.
So my issue, and it is obvious, is that you'll have this incredibly talented player, you know, some 16-year-old who is phenomenal at the game, you know, prodigy, and now you have esports directors, managers, coaches who they probably understand the esport quite well, they understand the business, the environment, but they don't really understand the game, and more importantly, the personnel within the game. So this 16-year-old is now tasked to build a team, to get players to play with him and build a team. So he does that. Yeah. You give faith in this prodigy because, I mean, it makes sense. Like, you don't really have the deepest understanding for the community within Rocket League. So you task it to the best player on your team. He builds a team. They do well, let's say. Cool, that's fine. When they start doing badly, now problems start to happen. Now this 16-year-old who was tasked to build a team is now also tasked to make very professional decisions about players and personnel within their roster, right? And you're leaving a very, very, very important part of your organization up to children.
Yes.
That is an inherently flawed system. And I wish I could say it was just local. It's globally a problem. I would say games like Counter-Strike and Dota, they're much more evolved. They have a much more, I'd say like their managing and coaching positions have a much more hands-on responsibility with their rosters and their player
I think
lineup.
they've had time for people to come out of the game
That's
and
true.
move into those
That is
positions.
a very, very important, like Rocket League is very new, so the people who will stop playing and moving on to coaching is only now happening.
Okay,
Right?
yes,
For the last many
yeah.
years, we've not really had a transition from player to manager.
Because they have to play
Yeah, I
first.
mean, exactly,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's a huge problem if you, it's not a problem, but you lack a lot of insight if you're just going to be, I mean, a good manager is a good manager, don't get me wrong, but it helps like a hell of a lot if you can go, if you're a player and then went to be a good manager.
Yes.
That is, it's pivotal, and that's why I think leaving important decisions up to 16
So the coach thing is one thing, but you mentioned team manager, and that's probably a good place to start. Someone who's been around, who understands the community. We mentioned names, Punishers, Goliath, ATK. I don't know that any of them have a deep understanding of Rocket League or its community. So maybe the starting point is a manager who is drawn from the community, understands the game, knows the vibe of the players, understands their egos and whatever goes on there, that can then help to build the roster and be the manager. And that would include, the roster would include finding a coach out of the community who can actually kind of coach them. But that's probably, that may well be a good place to start.
Sure. I like that you spoke about egos, because I want to know, what does joining an org like that do to your mental as a player?
What does it do, Happy Meal?
if you allow it, it can get your head pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think
That Pirates.
it's
a nice
hard.
kid.
Yeah, it's really hard, but I make it something. I try exercise humility. I mean, the reality is, if you don't have an ego, you're not going to survive in this
Yeah,
sport. Like,
yeah.
You need an ego.
Yeah.
My personality needs to be expressed and, implemented through the game. It has to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what am I doing? I'm just another player. Me, that in the game, that's me. I need to be that. I need to be confident. I need to believe I'm there to win. So unfortunately, it's hard. It's almost impossible to balance. You know? An ego, competitive sports, it's just what happens. However, exercising humility, professionalism, it's incredibly important. And I think something that I've always had, something I'm always conscious of, is my public image. Right? I'm not suggesting I'm very famous, but whenever I do have the opportunity to be in front of crowds or in some sort of PR position, I'm very meticulous in what I say and how I say it. I think there are a lot of players globally around the world, like they're not conscious of this, and I don't blame them necessarily. Like, they're young and untrained, but I think if you allow it, especially.
That's the thing. So then within the org, with your experience of being in the org, is there like, and maybe the team managers or the coaches, that media training, that training, it doesn't even have to be media, just that mental training to say, you know what, we know your prefrontal cortex isn't fully grown, but this is what you can do in the meantime. Do you have that?
I mean, there's only recently been, and I would say recently in the last, let's call it season and a half, where the idea of mental coaching has become a thing, where there have been, orgs that have the resources have brought on not just a player coach, but a mental coach. How to deal with, because listen, any game is easy when things are going well. Then team synergy is not a problem. It's okay, how do we deal with the losses, the frustration? So that's becoming a thing. And I believe that's part of Rocket League maturing, and we'll see more of it. Mental coaches, more experienced team managers who can deal with the ego side, because I think your team manager's got to have enough authority and altitude within a team to go, bro, knock this off. This has got to stop. This is what you can do instead, and guide those conversations. And as Happy Meal has said, make tough decisions, because halfway through a season it's like, sorry bro, you've tried hard, but you're out of here. You're going to have to leave, and make sure that person's not completely broken, but make the best decision for the team. So that is absolutely a growth pain point for Rocket League right now.
And then final word, I think, is just then, like, if you have that final saying, how do we get those orgs attracted to being in this VS Championship? Is it money? Is it...
Every org has different ideas of what success is for them and what their opportunities are. What I'm saying, and the message that I'm wanting to deliver to local orgs, is despite everything, all the chaos that goes, Rocket League, the local Rocket League scene has never looked better than it is right now. There is so much potential growth. We've spoken about the schools we can get into, how accessible Rocket League is. The VS Champs, already the talk and the planning for 2025 is exceptional. We are going to grow a massive local scene. The opportunities are there. Come and be part of it. I don't know what you want out of it as an org, but it's probably here. Let's come and have the conversation and find a way to be part of it. We absolutely need you to be part of it.
Happy Meal?
I think my answer is perhaps a bit prescriptive, but I think exposure. Exposure, full stop. However that is achieved, whether through the players building their own brand, or tournament organizers building their brand, so that when an organization looks at the tournament and the viewers coming in and the money invested, they think, okay, well, it doesn't matter what my team is really doing. Winning would be nice, but as long as they get onto that tournament and in that stream, we're benefiting. That's how the majority of esports is globally run. So it starts with exposure. And unfortunately, the way you get exposure is you have a very competitive, interesting league, and like the gameplay is...
Stories.
Exactly, and you need... The simple answer is resources, money, funding. It needs to come in from somewhere. But if you look in a more maybe an individual aspect, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, content from an individual perspective, it is very, it doesn't really exist in South Africa. And it's a shame, because if you are, let's say you have 3 players who are putting effort into making their own content, promise you they can go to most organizations probably globally, and if they have a big audience that back the players, it'll benefit the org immediately, and the org would be willing to pay them for that simple exposure. I mean, it's no secret that the players who are professionals and content creators get a bigger salary.
100%.
It's no secret. It's no secret.
Well, that's going to be us next. I feel like
you already have the content creation,
the content creation,
the gaming.
The age thing is the only problem.
You're going to do well in the Rocket League retirement.
Thank you, the retirement league, Sunday league of Rocket League. Thank you, just the Sunday league for the
Senior league.
Guys, wow, I can't believe that the conversation's over just like that, and we're just getting started.
I feel you, see, but I feel like the age thing is what's holding us back. Otherwise, now that I've heard from the professionals, I know I just need to be well behaved. I need to make content.
Yes.
I need to be good at the game.
Yeah.
And I can be fucked.
Okay.
Next week we start to tackle. Next week we start to tackle the Counter-Strike discussion. I know you can't wait for that. Yeah, you're excited. Till then, show up affair too. Next time, don't forget to check us out at VS Gaming World. So next time, peace.
Yeah, we were talking about Rocket League.
What the hell are you?
I'm turning 30.
Oh my word, okay.
Telkom. Possible begins here.